Bible lays out a very masculine, feminine frame in the book of Song of Psalms, and there's other examples such as the church being feminine, the church being likened to a female, and God being likened to a male. God's going to come back and marry his bride, the church, right? And the church is supposed to be just subject to him, and he's supposed to do everything and all this kind of stuff. Ironically, when I first came to God, when I first came back to the church and Bible and things like that, when I was about 19, I actually did look to God to do everything for me, to be my everything and take care of me and things like that. And there was a certain point where I realized he's not going to do that. There was a certain point where I realized he's not doing that. He might be technically, maybe he's taking care of me. I mean, I'm getting food. I have a roof over my head for the time being. That's how I felt, in my 20s. But I needed love. I needed a girl in my life, But slowly over the course of my 20s, I realized that a woman's love was based on money. A woman's love was based on a man's ability to quote unquote be a man, as they say. A man provides for his family and or else he's not a man. And that's a hard pill to swallow, man. And that's hypergamy. I don't care what anybody says, it's hypergamy. It's a hard pill to swallow. Because what if you can't? And I was sick. I was ill, disabled, and I couldn't. And I had this strong want for a woman. And I looked to God and I prayed and I said, Lord, I want a woman in my life. I want a wife. And it just never happened. So that's eventually why I left the church, because I felt that God was a liar. He didn't fulfill his end of the bargain. He says, follow me and I'll take care of all your needs. Look at the sparrows, look at the birds of the field. They do not toil, nor do they do not sow, nor do they reap. But yet God takes care of them, right? Verses like that when I was 21 were like gold to me, because I was like, oh my God, because I was so worried about what I was going to do for the rest of my life, because I got sick. And up until then, all I wanted to be was a basketball player. And I got pretty good. It's probably good enough to play college at one point, but I was ill and had a lot of stuff going on in my life. Grew up poor, and so it's hard to stay focused when you don't have anybody who's helping you stay focused. And it's hard to stay focused when, you got a lot of distractions and a lot of setbacks and personal illness and things like that. So that never worked out. And also neither did graduating college. And also neither did it, any type of career, job. And so I just said, you know what? Something's wrong here. God said he was going to take care of me. It hasn't been happening. I've tried. It's not that I've sat around and waited for him. I've done my best. And it never worked. So something isn't right. It's something isn't right. So I left the church. And during that time, right before I left the church, there was girls that I was interested in. And I thought they'd be different. I thought they'd be different because they were Christian girls. But they weren't. They weren't different. They were just like any other girls. They were looking at me like I had a big money sign on the back of my shirt. And that's it. They weren't looking at me like he's got a lot of love. He's got a lot of, he's a good guy. I like his personality. He's special to me. Had nothing to do with that. In fact, the kind of girls who were doing that were the kind of girls that I weren't even attracted to. Funny enough, ironically enough, the girls who were good looking, and I've always been told I've been good looking, so it's not that it's so far out of reach for me to get a girl who's good looking, right? And I've attracted a lot of good looking girls too. I've dated good looking girls, so that's not the issue. It's not that I'm not good looking. It's that I don't have money. So the irony is the better looking girls were less inclined to be all about caring about love. Now I've seen it off and on, and like I said, in my life, the girls who, from my memory, the girls who were the ones who were more prone to looking at a guy's personality and looking at him as an individual, and I'm falling in love with him, right? Those were the ones who either I was like young, like before high school, before their hypergamy kicked in, etc., or they were girls who were not as attractive, a little more dumpy, a little less attractive, right? The more attractive a girl was, the more her sex appeal was, the more prone she was to choose a guy who had money. And this is what they wanted. They wanted a guy with money. So this is what I encountered even in the church. There was good-looking girls that I was attracted to who seemed to be attracted to me, making eyes at me, seemed to be a vibe. I would go up and feel it out because, of course, in church you can't just go chat them up. You got to figure out some kind of little way of being around them and talking to them kind of indirectly and things like that. So I did what I could do, and it didn't work out. And I realized it was because they had by and by figured out that I didn't have a good job. They figured out that I didn't have a good career, that I didn't make a lot of money, and that I was struggling, okay? So once they figured that out, they were no longer interested in me. But up until then, there was attraction and there was whatever. So this is when I first started to learn about hypergamy. This is when I first started to, before I went to church, before that I wanted a wife, because during that time I wanted a wife. I didn't want no girlfriend, I wanted a wife. And that was when I was from age 20 to about 26. I wanted a wife. And never worked. So, but before that, when I was in high school, from about age 15 to 18, when I was chasing girls, they didn't want the guy with the money. They wanted the bad boy. They wanted the guy who was a little thug, and the bad boy. That's what they wanted, right? And they didn't care if he had a job or not. They didn't care about his money. They just wanted that sex, which is why a lot of these girls, if they're not in church, they get knocked up and they get pregnant because they're seeking the bad boy if they're not super hypergamous. And then after they have the baby with the bad boy, then they're like, oh, I'm done chasing bad boys. Now I want a real man, right? And the real man, what they mean is the guy with money. What they mean is the guy who's going to take care of them. What they mean is the guy who's going to raise their baby mistakes, right? So that's what I experienced. And I hit age 26, and the last girl in church rejected me, and I was like, okay, this is bullshit, I'm done. And I left. And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be a bad boy. So from age 26 to about age 30, 31, about 4 or 5 years, I was a bad boy, and I got laid a ton. Okay, girls were chasing me like crazy, because when you portray yourself as a bad boy, when you come across like you got that bad boy game and you're a player, they want you, because they want guys who other girls want. Okay, now granted, these are the dumb ones, because the smarter ones are like, okay, I'm done chasing the bad boys, now I want to go for the guy with money. So I couldn't get those kind of girls, because those kind of girls had already rode the cock carousel, and those kind of girls were already used up, etc., etc. But, you could always have the ones who want the bad boys, so that's what I did. And then eventually, stupidly, I frickin', ran into girls that I caught feelings for, and I dated because they were something about them, blah, blah, blah. And it was all good for a while until the hypergamy kicked in. It was all good until they were like, oh shit, I want love, but their version of love was a guy with money. And they realized you can't do that. You don't make a lot of money. You don't have a good career. You're just a photographer. I want kids. You can't do it. You can't raise my kids. You can't do this. So they looked at it like it was a business transaction, right? They looked at it like it was a business transaction. And that's been female nature. That's been my experience. So I just don't understand how anybody could, fall into that. How anybody could play into that hypergamy. How anybody could play into that type of mentality. Yeah, it's been it's been hard. It's been a crazy thing because, you know, I've had the worst of breakups. I've had the worst of, you know, I've had girls totally just leave me in the dust after years of dating them for a guy who had money, and then use me. And so I've seen the worst of the worst. Anybody who says women can do no wrong and the men are the ones who are always using women and blah, 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 that's so not true. Women are out here using men just as much, if not more, than men using women, and women have more sex than men. That's just a fact. I've witnessed it, I've experienced it. Women cheat more than men. Witnessed it, I've experienced it. Just is what it is. So, you know, anybody who says that it's not that way, no way. I've experienced it. Women are just as bad as men, if not worse.